Good, good, really, good. That's great. The system works. How you doing? Good.
It doesn't last year.
All right, we're gonna get started. So every week when we do these Reflection Fridays, we do them 6 times a semester. It's kind of a different configuration of people, and that's what's part of the magic. It's cool. We have some first timers, some regulars. So it's just really nice to see everybody here and in a busy time, but by design this is a time to slow down and enjoy good company, good food, and so forth. I'm just going to make a couple announcements. I'm John Isham, the director of the CSE. We do this, as noted, 6 times a semester, and the structure is 3 times a semester. It's our seniors, the CSE fellows who are seniors, so Devanjan being one of those 6. The final talk we'll have will be Sarah James, who will be doing our final talk in I think 3 or 4 weeks. And then in between we have Linda Schiffer, who many of you know, so that'll be fun too, and we'll spread the word about that. These have been really successful. It's just been, again, a nice way to slow down and talk with each other. Other programming for you students who are here kind of for the first time can be found in this pamphlet. So if you kind of want to know more about the center and you're here for the first time, we have this. And then I also just want to bring to your attention this postcard that a lot of us use that says what matters to you. And on the back is the CSE, CCI, Community Engagement, Midcore, PCI. So we're all kind of in a suite promoting this question along with our other many colleagues on campus. There's a sign-up sheet that will go around that is particularly designed to get our weekly newsletter if you don't get it already. Mustafa, the one other thing you and I were going to remind each other of is that next year we'll do this Reflection Friday again, and we're beginning to get nominations for that. So particularly folks who are here who are CSE fellows and in our Changemaker class, but just generally, if there's anybody that any of you would be interested to have doing this, being in the hot seat next year, let us know, and we'll start to announce that pretty soon.
We'll share a Google Doc.
We'll share a Google Doc.
With emails, so you can nominate people.
Good. Yeah. So if you have particular ideas, and again, the idea is 3 students, and then 1 each of a faculty member, a staff, and a community member. So that's how those are the 6 each of the 2 semesters. I think I've covered everything before. One final announcement, which I'm really thrilled to make in this setting, and it's sort of a preview announcement. There'll be a campus-wide announcement next week, but our team is shifting around a little bit, and as I move on from being the faculty director and then the director of the center, as of July 1, a new faculty member is joining the team, and that is Professor Nadia Hornby, who's here. I certainly speak on behalf of Heather, Mustafa, and Liz Robinson, and all the others in this grand suite of folks that we are just over the moon. So it's going to be a blast. Thank you. All right. And with no further ado, gentlemen.
So, I guess by way of introduction, I'm Roberto Lenz-Zagarena, and I have the pleasure of interviewing my good friend Devanjan here. And Devanjan, as we've worked together over the years, I feel like I've gotten some sense of what matters to you and the way that you live your life. So I look forward to hearing from you today in a clear and articulate way, share with others what matters to you and why.
Thank you. So first of all, I just want to ask how everyone's doing. Is everyone good? Everyone have some food? Everyone comfortable in their seats? It's such a nice day outside. I thought for a second, man, maybe we should just be outside, sitting in the grass, really taking in the sunlight, because this sometimes can feel rare. But yeah, I'm really excited to be in this conversation with you, Roberto. I don't know if everyone knows that Roberto is the director of both the AFC and the CCSRE, 2 places that have been like home for me since I've been here. First the CCSRE, the Center for Comparative Study of Race and Ethnicity, and now the new Anderson Freeman Resource Center. And it's nice for me to sort of bring together my different connections here, so bringing together the CSE and the AFC and CCSRE, so I'm really excited. Yeah. In thinking about what matters to me, so I've been thinking about this question a lot. And I thought I'd start by giving a story. So forgive me if this seems roundabout, but I promise it's getting somewhere. So I think it was last week, or maybe, was it last week? Yeah, last week. Weeks just fly by. I had the pleasure of getting to meet photographer John White. And this was part of a story for the Middlebury magazine that I was just a part of. And I don't know how many of you got to go to John White's talk or just be in his presence, but he's just an amazing spirit, a really just warm person. And I immediately, when I got around him, when I shook his hand, even just the way he was looking at me and shaking my hand, I really was like, wow, man, he's like speaking to me. He's really, I feel present. You know, I felt really present in that moment. And so it was this sort of awkward thing because we were doing this photo shoot, you know, which is fun. You know, it's exciting. You kind of feel like, man, you know, I'm famous. You know, you know, it's real fun. You know, like get my good best angles. And you know, this is a guy who's photographed, you know, Mandela, right? He's photographed Muhammad Ali. So I'm like, you know, man, like, what should I be doing? You know, should I get my fighter pose? Like, you know, like I'm next up, you know. So I'm really excited and I'm just really into it. But I'm sure I was a little bit nervous, and he was just sort of asking questions. You know how, you know, if you're taking a photo, you expect people to ask questions that'll sort of loosen you up or get you, just get you to smile or get you to break from sort of posing. So he starts talking to me, and he's asking me all these profound questions. And, you know, so he starts going, you know, he asked me, you know, what are you gonna be? What are you gonna be? So I'm like, shoot, I don't know. So the first thing I said is, well, I'm gonna be a sociologist. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound that profound. So I was like, you know, I'm gonna be an educator. So I'm like, all right, that sounds a little bit better. I'm gonna be a thinker, an activist. All these, you know, I started just sort of saying things. I'm just trying to sound profound too. You know what I mean? Like when somebody asks you something profound, you're not gonna say something unprofound. You gotta really meet them there. And this is, you know, this is a man who sees some things. So I'm like, you know, I gotta be seeing what he's seeing. And he never, you know, he never expected anything. He just smiles and he's warm and he's just snapping. And then he asked me. And again, if you saw him, you realize he has this very warm, soft voice, almost like you can't hear him sometimes. He almost trails off sometimes. But I was really catching what he was saying. He's clear. He said, so he said, you know, he said, how old are you? I said, 21. He said, okay, 110 years from now, how are they going to talk about you? And I'm like, damn. Really, like, this man is just reaching into my soul. And I didn't have time to think about it like I did with the "What matters to you" question. I had to think of that on the spot. So for whatever reason, the first thing that came to mind, and I think it definitely relates. You know, I said, well, I really thought about it, and I'm in thought, and he's snapping, and I said, you know, I want to be somebody. You know, because at first I kept thinking of like accomplishments. You know, I kept thinking of like who I'm going to be, like career-wise, like who I'm going to be, you know, where I'm going to be working, right? What type of work I'm going to be doing. And then I, for whatever reason, the thing that came to my mind was, I'm going to be, you know, they're going to say that DeBanjan was somebody who did everything, or what was it? Who everything he did with light. Here we go. I remember. But Red was like, you don't remember anything? He brought light, laughter, and fire to everything he did. That's what I told him. And he liked it, you know, and he, you know, he was really speaking to me, man. He said, you know, I got a name for you, but I heard, what's your name? For whatever reason, I thought he said, what's your name? Because I thought maybe he forgot my name. So I said, DeBanjan. He said, no, I have a name for you. And I said, so what is it? You know, I mean, we were already joking, so I thought maybe he was messing with me because he had already been poking a little fun at me and stuff. And he said, "Your name is Lamplighter." And I was like, man, that's wisdom, man. That's. And I just sat there and I really, I thought about it. And at first I was like, man, where are you getting this from? You just met me, So I was almost a little defensive, I was almost like, you mean that? Like, what you mean by that? I'm like, what do you see about that? Like, are you just saying that? Like, it was weird. Like, I almost was like, I was questioning it. And he was like, and he just kept saying, like, he sees this light, and all this. And I'm sure he took it from the words I gave him. But I think what my conversation with him really just led me to think about is, in terms of what matters to me, again, when he tried to ask me that first question of what I'm going to be, not entirely 100% sure, I do think I'm going to be an educator. I do think I'm going to be a sociologist. I do think I'm going to be a thinker, a speaker, whatever. But for some reason, I think maybe the more difficult question was the second one, right? How are people going to remember you? And I think so often, we're just in this race, of like, I gotta be this. I have to have this title. I have to have this distinction. We're all running after it, some sort of distinction, some sort of title, some sort of honor. And, I was just like, man, if I can bring those three character traits to everything I do, I know I will do my best. And I do mean something pretty specific by those three things, right? So light, laughter, and fire. So why did I pick those? Well, I don't know. I was just right as the first thing that came to mind, sort of free association thing. But in thinking about it more, I think of, have you guys ever seen the movie Coach Carter? Anyone? Yeah? This is why you seen that movie. We got a few people in the room. But there's a poem that so the story Coach Carter is played by Samuel L. Jackson, and he's a basketball coach in sort of this inner city school. He's teaching kids how to play basketball. It's kind of a typical story, but there's some elements that are really profound to me. So he said, he would always ask this one student who was always just he had this kind of chip on his shoulder. He was very quick to react. He's very reactive. So he'd always ask him, Mr. Cruz, what are you most afraid of? What is your deepest fear? He would ask him this while he's running, while he's playing. He'd be like, what is your deepest fear? And he asked him throughout the movie, and then at the end, spoiler alert, he gets up, and it's this whole thing about how basically Coach Carter is saying that grades, academics should come first for these students, not just athletics, right? Because everybody loves these kids when they're playing basketball, but Coach Carter's whole point was that, well, they're failing all their classes. Like, what's more important here? Getting these kids to have opportunities for the future, or just playing basketball. So anyway, again, there's a point to this. I know it's roundabout, but he says, our greatest fear. He recites this poem by Marianne Williamson. This goes, I'm probably gonna mess up part of it, but it's a poem. Actually, my father used to read to me all the time. He would try to wake me up for school. I don't know why. This was how he tried to wake me up. It was two things. He'd wake me up with this poem, and also we had this calendar of things called Bushisms. I don't know if you heard. So it was a calendar. It was 365 days of funny shit that George W. Bush has said. I don't know where we found it. I think it was Barnes & Noble. We had this calendar, so if you couldn't wake me up with the inspiration, he'd say something crazy that George W. Bush has said. It's actually amazing like that. There's an entire calendar. I swear to you. Look it up. So anyway, when he wasn't waking me up with funny stuff that George W. Bush had said, he wake me up with this poem, and it goes, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be talented, beautiful, successful? In fact, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. And when we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates others. And I think, like, I used to see that as a kid and be like, wow, that's a cool poem, you know? And I get really excited. I love the movie. I've seen it so many times. But I think it gained a real different meaning after coming to Middleburg. And I think I had recognized that there was light within me when I was younger, because I think when people are young, they don't worry as much maybe about, you know, some of those things we were talking about, right? Like achieving certain distinctions or honors, right? You're just doing, you're just being. There's a certain freeness, right? But I think after coming here, you know, there was an immediate conflict between the way I carried myself and the way that my light shone, and I think the way that, you know, a lot of other people just sort of, you know, expect you to be, you know? And I think that's difficult for a lot of people, you know, is that you know, it's easy to say everybody, you know, has something to offer here, and everybody, you know, everybody can, you know, it's easy to say a lot of things, but it's difficult in practice. You know, it's difficult because everybody brings a different light, you know, and it's not about whether they have it or not. It's about whether it's being recognized. You know what I mean? And I think that was really difficult for me for a long time, and I was angry about it. I was frustrated, and I felt like, man, like it's just a fight. It's like a fight. Like, you know, if they gonna give me darkness, you know, I'm gonna give them darkness. You know. And I think I'm still struggling with that, you know. And I think maybe that's where that fire comes in, you know. And there's so much light that comes from fire, you know. But it almost can't be fire alone, right? It has to be, I don't know, I mean, this is sort of like philosophical, but it has to be one with the other, you know. Because I don't think I've lost my fire, you know. But I think I've recognized my light. You know what I mean? That's what matters. Because I think, and this brings me to my next, I guess, if I were to bullet point, you know, one thing I'm really interested in is the idea of access. Access. I think access matters to me a lot. And that can mean so many things, right? Access to higher education, I think, is a big thing for me. You know, my friend says, while I was right there with the hat on, we our freshman year when we first got here, we began volunteering at Addison Central Teens in town. And we didn't really have any particular like agenda. We just really wanted to like hang out with people who, you know, were high school kids, were middle school kids, whatever, and just sort of do what we do. You know, we perform poetry, spoken word, rap. We're just, you know, orators, I guess. We're artists. We write. So we just wanted to, you know, see if we could be of any help. You know, we were freshmen, we were like, again, excited, and I think it was a way to do something outside of here, outside of this sort of college bubble, I guess. And and it's been one of the most meaningful experiences of my life, really. And I think one thing we both related about was that we benefited from programs like that when we were younger, right? So being part of programs, whether it's after school, whatever, where you're writing or you're performing or you're doing community service, or we used to have these fashion shows, just all types of events for kids to basically just whatever, to have a good time and to keep their light shining, because it's so easy when you don't have stuff to do, to just, just be idle.
Yeah.
So I was involved in a lot of type of stuff like that. So we had a really good time. But anyway, the point of where I was going with that is we met a friend of ours who we met through the teen center, and he was just so happy. He was in a good mood, and we were like, wow, man, like, how's everything going? And things were just going great. Things were going really fantastic. He had just been accepted into college over in Rutland. He wants to study psychiatry. He's just doing well. He's working. He loves to rap, man. He loves making music. Like, man, that guy just writes, just makes music. He's like, oh, I'm gonna drop an album. Like, man, you gonna drop an album now? You're not gonna wait for a mixtape? You gonna go straight to the album? He's like, yeah, man, do it. And he just loves it. He loves rap. He loves freestyle. Like, he'll just come over. We'll just be out on our porch, and he'll just, that's senior housing. We have porches. Everybody's like, what? Like, where on campus you have a porch? Yeah, that's right. You get that good lottery number. That's we're trying to keep it generational, though. We're trying to pass it on, but I don't think it's gonna work out. Just one generation we got it. So yeah, he's just coming and he's just so excited, man. And I was like, wow, like if you would have seen that kid a couple years ago, man, he was not in that place. Mm-hmm. He was not in that place. Like, he had to go through such a journey. Mm-hmm. And just to know that we were there on part of his journey for even a little bit of the time, I mean, there's no better feeling. Mm-hmm. There's no better feeling. That's what I mean when I say access to is not, I'm not somebody who believes that Middlebury College is for everybody. Mm-hmm. I don't think it has to be. I don't think it necessarily should be. I don't think it ever can be, just by the nature of it. But I do think there is a school for everybody. There is a program for everybody. There is a mission, a journey, a path for everybody. And I think if we don't open up those doors and increase access to these sorts of resources, to these sorts of opportunities for people like, our friend who I can't even like, I mean, he was really, like, when I say he was not in this position, like, listen, man, you don't have to go to the inner city. It does not have to be a community of color for you to see the effects of the school to prison pipeline, of punitive practices, of incarceration, not rehabilitation. I mean, those things that we talk about in abstract have very real effects for people, and I've seen it back home in New York, but I saw it here, and it's not rare. It's more common than I ever thought. I mean, I was completely ignorant. I thought Vermont was this place where people skied and resorts, and it is that. But it's a real dark side to it. It's a real ugly side to it. And to be honest, in a lot of ways, I think it's worse than the city. I really do. I think it is. I think it's tougher because it's just so much less, again, access, right? Like, to be able to get on a train and go and see museums. Like, that's a privilege that is just not as readily available in a rural environment. So to be a part of that, and we started doing it our freshman year, so we were still kind of in that just got out of high school. We were just so, we could relate so well to these kids and the stuff they were going through, stuff at home, stuff at school. And some days it was just playing pool. It was just being somebody, just being a friend. And that's what I mean. I don't care what my title is. I really don't. I really don't. I don't care how many degrees I have because I'm still the same person. I'm the same Devanjan now that I was when I was younger, before Middlebury, right? Before grad school, before whatever is gonna come in the rest of my life. I'm always gonna be that same person. You know what I mean? And that's who I am. Like degrees is not who I am. I think people get too caught up in that. Your job description is not what you are. Your resume is not who you are. It's a supplement to who you are. So to me, that's what gives me meaning. Because we brought light, laughter, and fire. We were able to at least once a week, in some way or another, bring that to other people's lives in a way that had been brought to us. And that's powerful. I spent a summer in Chicago, my first summer as a CSE fellow. And I was working with a police officer for the Chicago Police Department who ran her own nonprofit. And where she got the idea was she used to be an officer who was placed in the projects. So a lot of this stuff that she was getting, what she was doing was chasing kids and telling them what to do. So she thought after a while, man, like, what is the point of my job? Like, what am I doing? Like, this is what I get paid to do? So she was basically like, these kids just need something to do. They need, again, after school programs, they need access. So she went to her department and they're like, well, we have some funds for community policing, but here, go ahead, do. Basically, you take care of it. What's that thing?
Q&A in 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes or now is the time?
In 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes, okay, cool. I was like, I'm just going on and on. All right. And and so she started this nonprofit, and it was bare bones. It was in a church basement, and it was literally, again, whatever these kids needed. Just like with the teen center here, whatever these kids needed. If it was just a meal, some snacks. I remember at the teen center, one of the biggest things was they always had healthy snacks. They had like carrots, they had pretzels, they had just snacks for people to eat. Because sometimes that's the biggest thing that's going on in kids' minds. Man, I'm hungry, like I'm hyper, like I'm gonna cause some trouble. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes me and Shazwa will be eating a lot of them snacks too, because I be hungry too sometimes. And I just had a couple classes, I got this paper to write, I'm hungry, So a lot of times it was just stuff like that, man. And I did some of the most routine tasks, stuff that anyone can do. Taking lunch boxes out of a box and putting them in the fridge for later. I did this every day, every morning, for an entire summer. Chairs need picked up, clean up after everything is done, whatever they need. I was like, yeah, I'm just here to work. And again, one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. I worked with kids every day. I did the same thing. We wrote, we rapped, we just spent time, and some of them were really talented, and they didn't think it. And I was like, man, you writing poetry at your age that I would have never been able to, right? It's like your mind is working on a whole nother level, but for whatever reason, you don't think that. And that's probably because somebody at some point told you that. So they tried to dim your light. They tried to put out your fire. They tried to stop you from, whatever it is. So to me, access, man, and access to education, access to, like I said, I studied the police. I worked with a police officer, and I don't just study the police. I don't try to be from an outsider's perspective. I really try to come up with viable ways of how community police interactions can be in any way made better, progressed. I wouldn't even go so far as to say repaired, but progressed, advanced. And it's crazy, man, in the interviews I do, how much people feel like the police are not for them. That's not something I would ever call. I would never report an incident to them. I would never speak to one. And it's like, so think about that access, right? So it's not just education. You don't have access to your own law enforcement in your neighborhood. So what are they doing there then? That sounds like a militia to me. I mean, if they're in your neighborhood and you don't have any access to them, then what is that? That don't sound like something that I would pay my tax dollars for, right? And it's not just police, right? Then you talk about the court system, right? You talk about, well, if there's misconduct, do you feel comfortable, reporting this? No, I would never do that. It's so many different things. Oh, my parents' first language isn't English. It would be too much. Who has the money for lawyers' fees? Who actually knows how the court process works? How do you actually file these things? Does it just get lost in bureaucracy, right? All these sociological questions, to me, are about access. If you can't even access the people in your neighborhood, your teachers, your police officers, your government workers, whatever it may be, how are you going to feel any sense of belonging? So, yeah, I could go on and on. But these are things that matter to me. These are things that I've thought about. And I've kind of gone on a whole circuitous route. But, I think that ties in a lot of my experience here, my experience working, with communities that I'm a part of or I'm a part of temporarily, and what I hope to do in my life. And I think just as important as that light and that fire is that laughter, man. Because I thought for a while there I lost that, I really did. And I think a lot of people here, maybe it's a higher ed thing, maybe it's a New England thing, I'm not really sure. People just don't laugh enough, people take things way too seriously. And I'm saying that as somebody who, listen, let me not beat around the bush, right? Serious shit happens here. We have some serious things to deal with, issues of inclusion, issues of fairness, equality, etc. But you gotta smile. You gotta smile through it. You gotta find ways to laugh, to really just laugh and find joy. Because you know what? And Ta-Nehisi Coates spoke to this when he was here. He said, there are some of for me personally, like from my grandparents' generation, right? The British imperial rule, right? My parent, my family is from Calcutta, India. The British imperial rule was the norm. That's what you lived with. That was the norm for generations, right? So if people could laugh through that, if people could find joy and could live and find some sense of happiness within that, I'm not going to sit here at Middlebury College and talk, think that I can't find something to laugh about or smile about. And that's not to say don't complain. Listen, I'll be the first one. I'll complain about everything. But it is finding some sense of joy. It's survival. It's survival.
You got to keep lighting those lamps.
Yeah. Man, if you don't laugh, man, I don't know. Man, the world is a lot of darkness, but you gotta laugh sometimes. I don't know. I mean, even in this talk, I make dark jokes too. But it's funny to me. Sometimes you gotta have that little, edge. You got a little attitude, And sometimes you'd be surprised when you lighten people up, the things you can get through to them. You'd be really surprised. Thurgood Marshall actually used to do that. He used to crack jokes all the time. I mean, this is a man who would literally go to the South and would be in the South, like in the Klan South, and would be on the stand, trying to get people, to not get the death penalty, right? To not be incarcerated for their life, right? He would be up there, doing his little lawyer thing and cracking jokes. I mean, if he can do that in those conditions, I can crack a joke in front of a classroom. It's I think it's a good tactic. So yeah, I hope I gave you guys some food for thought.
So should we open it up for questions?
Yeah.
Or comments?
You got any questions, Roberto? Maybe you should start.
Sure.
You know me well.
Well, yeah. Well, it's in hearing you speak, you were describing what I've seen in your affect, and by that I mean I've seen you in those dark moments, and then I've seen your leadership in starting the center, and I've seen your transformation now as a senior, and also the future, and seeing how you've persevered through dark moments, and how your light has shone, and so gratifying to see it shining brightly now, even in the last 3 weeks of the semester, before your big transition.
Mhm.
And I hope that you're able to remember these lessons in your new setting, because all transitions are painful and difficult, right? So that first year of grad school is there can be some dark moments.
Yeah.
So you just gotta, yeah, keep the lamps lit. That's from now on. That's in my head. You're the lamplighter.
Mine isn't a question to Benjamin, but I'm so glad that I came here. I can't remember why or how the conversation happened, but I was talking to Colby Benjamin, who is the executive director of the Addison County Teens, just like a week or two ago. And he commented on you and I assume your friend and the impact that you guys made. And it also made me think back to talking with Uta, the former executive director, and how she would talk about it's not what you do, it's building trust with young people. And sometimes it's exactly what you said about being present and being faithful, and not about I need to have the best program to put on, or I need to get them to do whatever it is I have a skill in. It's just being there and seeing what evolves and responding. So I just wanted you to know that just as recently as a week or two ago, I had this conversation. So kudos to you.
Yeah.
Expansion, I'm wondering, you've pushed and inspired lots and lots of students and staff and faculty here, and that impact will continue to be felt in the years ahead. If you come back in 10 years for a reunion or to visit a friend who's on the staff or faculty, what would you be most gratified to see changed at Middlebury?
That's a good question.
Brutal honesty preferred.
Yeah.
Yeah. More color will be great. I mean, in all facets, staff, faculty, students, etc. That seems almost obvious, or and I don't know what that means. I don't necessarily just mean numbers, but just in the culture of the place. I don't know how to put that academically, but just more color, more brightness, more liveliness. More of the things that I was talking about. And I would like to see a real rich, if I come back as an alum, a real rich alumni connection, especially for alumni of color, and for alumni who, from whatever backgrounds, have felt disconnected because they didn't feel like any part of this institution is something they would want to contribute back to or give back to or be a part of in a lifelong manner. And I think being part of the AFC and talking to so many alums, I think people are definitely excited about that as this sort of potential place where there's a community across time, right? So even just the naming of Anderson, Freeman, and now there seems to be, maybe it's just me from my own bias, but seems to be a slightly increased visibility about our alums of color, and I think that's important, because it just is. I'm gonna have to get back on you.
Yeah,
get back to you. I think
answer.
that's one thing. Yeah, I don't know.
That's good.
I don't know.
Thanks.
I'd like to be surprised.
Yeah, that's a
but that's
good
definitely a
answer.
start. More color, just all around.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to amend that question and just say, hopefully one of the times you are coming back, it's because you're coming back to teach here.
Yeah, no, I'd be down. You gotta pay me right.
Well, then stay away. Then stay away.
I'd love to pick up on the point you were making about your work with the young folks in town, and then Tiffany's follow-up. The sense of being present and how important that is. And I'm just being there and told it so beautifully. And I wondered how that can translate to what we do in the classroom. What about that experience becomes something suggestive for faculty, particularly in light of the note that went out the other day from Andy and Katie in terms of us trying to help slow things down and so forth. Talk to us a little bit, almost how you would envision being a faculty member and bringing those sort of deep, present characteristics to the classroom.
That's a good question. I keep getting questions sort of similar to this. When I did my research at the symposium, I got a similar question of like, how can staff, faculty, administrators, et cetera, be more like aware of things going on? I would just say, be really, first and foremost in life, but especially in the classroom, I think, be really observant, and just really like on your toes, and just always sort of just thinking and just sort of just picking up on little things, you know? Because there's so many dynamics that happen in the classroom, so many things going on. And I think it's just important to know, and the first step is being aware of it and observant of it first, before there's really any concrete solution. None of that can happen if there's not even an understanding of what's going on. So I'll give you an example. A lot of classes I've had, what I've noticed is, and people can correct me if I'm wrong or if they disagree, this is my personal thing of how I've seen it. I see a lot of students of color who will often like raise their hand and then they'll put their hand back down. They'll kind of think about it for a second. They'll like write something down, or they'll watch to see who else. And then they'll finally raise their hand, and when they're called upon, they're really careful about like the way they word what they're trying to say, and then like apologizing along the way. Like, oh, I'm sorry if that's not really relevant, or like that doesn't seem, And I think in general, that's something across the board. Like a lot of students feel scared to just say things as it is, because it doesn't sound coherent or like articulate or academic or whatever. And I think maybe we should be a little more open to that. Now on the flip side though, I've seen white students who will be very quick to just raise their hand and say something and not even sometimes have any regard for whether it's pertains to whatever the current discussion is. I think it's just a difference in terms of confidence, in terms of, again, that where I guess it might come from, and again, I could be totally off on this, is what was the academic environment when you were younger, right? And there's research on this, in reference to gender, but I think, in terms of race or whatever, what type of school you came from, there's just a difference of who feels like what they're saying sounds right, sounds intelligent, sounds like what somebody would say in a college classroom of this status, and what some people feel like, oh, maybe that's not relevant, maybe that's not relevant, maybe that's not relevant, and this like constant like double take. And that's just something I've observed. I haven't proven it, I haven't researched it, but again, if I was in the classroom, that's something I would be like, well, why is that? And like seeing like where can I address that, right? Because that's something small. And it's something that anyone can recognize. You don't have to be any specific person. You don't have to have any specific background to notice that. You just have to be a real thoughtful educator, I think. Or just a thoughtful, just really just thinking those things through. Like, wow, what could that be? Like, why could that be? Or am I overthinking it? Am I putting something there that's not there? Because I think it's true. And I think, I guess what I was getting back to is I think it is like an opposite. There's like a two-sided thing to this whole like Middlebury anxiety. I think some people are really anxious because of like whatever the work is that's presented, and they're like, oh, this is too much. And I think that's across the board too. I think especially for students who have all these other things, whether you're working 2 jobs, whether you're sending money back home, whether you're, whether you are conscious of the way you speak English, right? Whether it's a dialect, whether it's with a specific accent, whether that be regionally, whether that be internationally, right? Like, when you're conscious of all those things, when those are things that are adding up, I think it adds an extra burden that people might not be talking about. That's aside from work. That's aside from, okay, what's the work on the syllabus and things like that. So again, I think any way that those things can be taken into account, right? Yeah, I don't know.
You've been here for 4 years with the graduating students, so you know the campus really well, the student body real well. Do you think there are areas that the students themselves need to work on as a student body, as a community here?
Yeah, I do. I think everything I've been mentioning so far, I don't see how it wouldn't be relevant to students. I think, man, you know, it's like crazy the shit that students do. It's crazy to me. And I think it's really interesting, again, when I think about higher education, like what is this thing we call college? Because for some people, to me, it's like, man, this is just your time to just fool around. Like, this is just your time to mess up and learn, I guess, from your mistakes, you know? Like, let me just do everything. Like, it's like really like this type of stuff that people do, you know, whether it's a small incident, whether it's, you know, like, oh, I'm just gonna wear, you know, I don't want to even get into it, but there's so many instances where it's like, wow, like what? It's like not even like a be politically correct thing. I think that's often what people make, like, why are you trying to police me? Why are you trying to be politically correct? I'm like, it's not even about that, because like I'm not even really that like big of like a political correctness person. It's like literally like, what were you thinking when you did this? Like, you must have really thought like, one, there's no consequences, and that's been very apparent here, that people don't feel there's any consequences for, certain people don't think there's any consequences for the type of stuff they do. When in actuality, this is the type of stuff that can get you fired from a job in many places of employment, or it should at least. You know, we're talking not just microaggressions, I mean, just hate, just hate. And I think we're so naive to think that college campuses are not places of hate, because I think on one hand, college campuses are these places of great thought and action and social movement, and they're also places of such, I mean, this is where inequality really gets reinforced, I think, in a lot of ways. I mean, and some of the things we're seeing now across the country, I mean, it's horrific. I mean, I read a story about a black student who had a bike lock put around his neck by other students. I think it was San Jose State University, something like that. You know, hazing, fraternities, like there's a real dark side, you know, to these institutions. And that's not to say they're all bad. Again, what I said was I think there should be more access to places like this because of what they provide, you know. But on the other hand, I just don't even know where to start, you know. Because I'm like, if I were to talk to students, in some ways I'd be more, not scared isn't the right word, but it would be more hostile than everybody, you know, in this room right now, you know, like really trying to get people to move on what they think about things, that like, you know, a ghetto fabulous party or whatever the hell it is, you know, there's something inherently like just like what's your point? Like what's your point? You know what I mean? Like, and I guess maybe it's just all fun and games for a lot of people. But then that gets back to my original question. So college really is just fun and games for a lot of people. And then that makes me think, well, when college is for some people life and you know, is the difference really between making it and not making it. You have a real disparity then about the people who are in the same institution. You have some people who for this is really important and like your whole life is on this and you're really struggling here and like, you know, this is an opportunity you can't afford to thwart. You can't afford to mess up. And for others, it is literally just fun and games. I don't know what to say about that. You know, and not to say college shouldn't be fun, right? Like I've had a great time. Like, you know, like I've partied. You know, like I'm not anti-party. I just don't understand what goes through your head when you think blank, blank, blank. And I don't know. And something about it to me too is like everything is so anonymous, you know. And not to say there wasn't anonymity before the internet, but now it's especially cowardly to me. You know, like you won't even do things out in the open. So yeah, I don't know. I can't get any short answers to these questions. I can just only go on further because I just don't know. Like, I don't know. It's not my experience. I've never sat and thought, what can I write on a you know, a faceless, you know, interface or whatever typey thing. You know, what can I say that'll really fuck up somebody's day? That doesn't go through my mind, so I can't fathom what is going through the person's mind who is doing that. You know what I mean? Like, so I can't even speak to that. But I know it's a problem. You know, and your question was about students. That's students. You know, that's students here. So and everywhere. So I don't know. I mean, we need a whole wave of things. I don't know.
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
Others?
You gotta keep it coming, you know. What else? World peace. What we going? You know, you want me to fix the deficit we got, the national budget crisis?
That's after grad.
Well, I'm just curious, you know, you talked about darkness, but what ways have you been able to keep yourself resilient, and what are your recharging areas? You know, you work
Yeah.
with teens and can kind of do their progression, but what ways do you recharge so that you can keep the light moving?
Yeah, that's a great question. Community. I mean, you know, like I said, we had that nice senior house, so we invite friends over. I mean, just yesterday, you know, there's a bunch of people over, just playing cards, just listening to music, watching a game, just chilling, like nothing else, just being, like, man, like that's so hard for people, like just be. You know, like nothing else. This is not to advance your careers. It's not a networking thing. It's just to be. You know, that's the thing I like about Reflection Fridays. Like, I mean, that's how I understood it. Is literally I'm just here to talk to y'all. So I'm here talking. Like, you know, just being like. And I think that's especially hard for. Again, I can only speak from being a student of color. I've never been a white student here, but I imagine it's a similar thing for white students. Like, just be. Like, you don't gotta do all that extra stuff. Like, just have a regular party. Like, it doesn't have to have a sombrero. Like, why is that fun? Like, you know what I mean? Just be. Like, just. Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe that's not. Maybe that wouldn't work. Maybe that is just being you. But for me, like, I don't know. Just being us. Like, we're not. There's so much, you know, like the AFC is just work, it's trying, it's really trying, but it's like, sometimes I like the events where it's like, we're just cooking, you know, we just have a supper. It's nice, you know, or a good party, you know, Polana party, you know, good music, you know, that's what keeps me going, is feeling like I'm around people who, I'm not putting on anything. I'm not trying to be anybody I'm not. I'm just being me, and they're cool with that, and I'm cool with who they are, and we're just together. And we've had some beautiful times. I mean, I've made some of the absolute most amazing connections of my life here, and I hope that they are lifelong connections, and I truly believe they will be, because you just learn. You can learn a lot from people. You know, there's not a lot else to do, so you're gonna spend a lot of time with other people. But yeah, being around people, and being around people who just appreciate you and just who lets you be who you are, and I think that's so important. I think that's what the beauty of a place like the AFC allows, and I think, and talking to students about what it is about the AFC that makes it such a place that people want to be. If it is that place for people, is just that.
The people.
Yeah.
You know, what you just articulated. I think it was Leilani Brown said at the Alumni of Color Weekend regarding Polana and what Polana was for them. It was just a place, but things could get left at the door, and it could just be being. It wasn't.
And I want to be clear, being doesn't mean not challenging.
Right.
We have some real difficult discussions when we are chilling, playing cards, drinking, whatever we're doing, you know. We have those conversations about, you know, whatever, gender, you know, what it means to be a black American as opposed to a black immigrant, you know, class, you know, sports. We talk, you know, it's just it's just there. It's all happening. And we're breaking each other down. We're challenging each other, but it's from a place of love. And I think until this, if we can't even, if I don't feel like to the play, you know, in terms of talking to the larger student body, if I don't feel like I can really enter your space and even feel safe to just be me and say what I want to say, there's no way we're gonna get to that other stuff. There's no way we're gonna get to that deep-seated whatever intolerance or whatever it may be. Because I can't even meet you anywhere on any place, you know. And I don't think that's a black-white thing. I think it's just a people thing. Like, are you willing to meet somebody where they are really, you know? So yeah.
All right.